the Lord while seeing a non-devotee. One should begin the worship of the demigod Ganapati, Ganesh, who drives away all impediments in the execution of devotional service. In the Brahma Samhita it is stated that Ganapati worships the lotus feet of Lord Nrsimhadev, and in that way has become auspicious for the devotees in clearing out all impediments. Therefore, all devotees should worship Ganapati. What we do in our line is that we worship Lord Nrsimhadev directly. Therefore, at the end of every kirtan or preaching or arti ceremony, we always close with the prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev. Lord Nrsimha is the protector of the Vaishnavas. So he's the Lord in the half-man, half-lion form. And he's very auspicious. So if Ganapati gets his power of removing obstacles by worshipping Lord Nrsimhadev, why not worship Lord Nrsimhadev directly? Anyway, the deities should not be bathed in water which has been touched by the nails or fingers. So in other words, when we bring the water of the 9 sacred rivers into the Snanapatra in the beginning of the bathing ceremony, this is also discussed in the instructions for applying tilak, or doing the Narsingha protection, the Vedic protection, the Narayan Kavacha. You should use the Ankusha Mudra, or the elephant goad mudra, to bring the 9 sacred rivers into the Snanapatra or into the Achamanapatra. So this water should not be touched by the fingernails or the fingers. You simply use the goad, the elephant goad, as a symbolic tool. You don't actually touch the water. When a devotee is perspiring, he should not engage himself in worshipping the deity. Similarly, there are many other prohibitions. For example, one should not cross or step over the flowers offered to the deities, nor should one take a vow in the name of God. These are all different kinds of offenses in the matter of executing devotional service, and one should be careful to avoid them. In the Padma Purana, it is stated that even a person whose life is completely sinful will be completely protected by the Lord if he simply surrenders unto him. So it is accepted that one who surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes free from all sinful reactions. And even when a person becomes an offender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he can still be delivered simply by taking shelter of the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. In other words, the chanting of Hare Krishna is beneficial for eradicating all sins. But if one becomes an offender to the holy names of the Lord, then he has no chance of being delivered. The offenses against the chanting of the holy name are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord. So I'm going to give the commentary on each one separately. Blaspheming the devotees is very offensive to the holy name because, after all, if it wasn't for these devotees, we wouldn't even know the holy name or the importance of chanting the holy name. The devotees, individually and collectively, help us to understand devotional service, both by positive and negative examples. In other words, we see the positive examples of the great devotees, the great acharyas, the gurus in the line of disciplic succession, and the senior devotees in our own line. And we also see the bad examples of the devotees who fell down, devotees who deviated, devotees who made great offenses and were punished, and so on. So there are 3 ways of learning. A first-class devotee learns simply by hearing to avoid all these offenses. The second-class learns by seeing the example of others who perform these offenses, and then they experience a block or a impediment in their spiritual advancement. And the third class learns by personal experience, by performing offenses and getting smashed. So don't be second class or third class. Especially don't be third class. At least be second class. And see that some devotees made so many mistakes, so many offenses, and because of this they either fell down or they became stopped, stuck, blocked, and couldn't advance further. But best of all, simply by hearing all these offenses, one avoids them by always being situated in the mode of goodness. And then, of course, he won't blaspheme the devotees. He won't blaspheme anybody. So it's very important not to blaspheme the devotees, not to talk against the devotees, not to criticize unjustly. Sometimes the devotees, especially the neophyte devotees, they make some mistakes, and in this way we can recognize, oh, they made this mistake, and then this was the reaction. Scientific analysis, but not that we should become all emotionally involved and say, oh yes, they were terrible people and blah blah blah. No, they tried and they failed because of their lack of intelligence or their lack of spiritual understanding, or simply by bad character, bad habits, or whatever, or lack of sincerity or whatever. But not that we should blaspheme them. You see the difference? The difference is in the intention. To think that, oh, I am superior to this other devotee who fell down, that's very much in the mode of passion and ignorance. One is deriving some enjoyment from the failure of another devotee. That's not very good. But we have to understand analytically why these devotees fell down, or why they failed in their mission to propagate Krishna consciousness, so that we can avoid the same mistakes. And when we do that soberly and objectively, we're not blaspheming. We're blaspheming only when we have some motivation to put down other devotees. So don't do that. The second offense against the holy name is to consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. Sometimes the atheistic class of men take it that any demigod is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. But one who is a devotee knows that no demigod, however great he may be, is independently as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, if someone thinks that he can chant Kali, Kali, or Durga, Durga, and it's the same as Hare Krishna, that is the greatest offense. Why is the greatest offense? Because they're not discriminating ontologically between the Supreme Lord and the demigods. Ontologically, the Supreme Lord is Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu means the controller, the Supreme. So all of the forms and expansions of the Supreme Lord are Vishnu Tattva. However, the demigods, or most of them anyway, are Jiva Tattva. They're just like us. They're living entities who have been promoted to these powerful positions because of their previous pious activities, and given special powers, empowered by the Lord, and given special bodies that have the kinds of knowledge and power they need to control different universal functions. The one exception is Lord Shiva. Shiva is the Supreme, but he has taken a position where he is directly in touch with Maya. So he is not worshipped as the Supreme. He's worshipped instead as the greatest devotee of the Lord. And he has a special position called Shiva Tattva. And Shiva Tattva, Lord Shiva is the only being in the Shiva Tattva. He's somewhere in between. So we don't worship Lord Shiva as the Supreme, although of course we offer him all respect as a great devotee. But we worship Lord Vishnu and his expansions, and these are all mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam very clearly, who is a demigod and who is the Supreme. So one should follow this philosophy and not try to worship the demigods as being supreme. Now, some people will tell you, well, in the Vedas, in the different ritualistic ceremonies for worshiping the demigods are worshipped as the supreme. And that is true. But that doesn't mean that the demigods are supreme. It means that in that ceremony, the demigods, as representatives of the Supreme, are accepting the worship as due to the Supreme. Just like on the Vyasa Puja day,